Good morning. Very good to see so many of you on the call today. My name is Richard Broom. I look after the Line Search Before You Dig service, and I'm very pleased to be hosting the first ever virtual damage prevention day. So it's the third one we've done as an event, but the first one online. So very pleased to host it, albeit in different surroundings. We have a packed agenda that should have plenty for everyone throughout the day. As I say, sorry not to be in person this year, but on the upside, I hope you know where the emergency exits are and there shouldn't be any queues for lunch. On a really positive note, the carbon footprint is excellent, and by manipulating the agenda, we have excellent speakers from 3 different time zones available to join us. Without them, it wouldn't be on, so we're very grateful for them taking part today. It's taken a lot of time and effort from the team here to put the day on, so I really hope you enjoy it. If I could kindly ask 3 things of you, particularly amongst the obvious distractions of a virtual conference, to be 1, contribute to the breakout sessions. You all have different experiences and would really appreciate you sharing them. Number 2, please speak to the exhibitors and see what they have to say. We're very grateful for their support and they all have some excellent things to help you. And thirdly, stay for the duration. The final presentation is eye-opening and something that we can all learn from. We want this to be an enjoyable and friendly day, and so please take the time to chat, challenge and collaborate wherever possible. You'll see on the portal that there's a Q&A, and I think there should be 3 questions coming up. So please, if you can take part in that and answer those, there'll be a couple of them coming throughout the day, but there's 3 there to start with to get you used to the portal and get some feedback so we can understand that going forward. So we've got, as I say, some great exhibitors there, strong array. You can see them all up on the screen, and they'll be very happy to talk to you of all the different ways they help people work safely. There are breaks that we fully understand people will pop off and grab a cup of tea or coffee, but if you can, please go and speak to them. They've all got some interesting documentation there, but they've also got live chats to go and speak to their representatives. So 2020, what's changed? I'd almost like to say not much has happened since we were last together, well, back in June last year, but that would be stretching the truth a little for obvious reasons. From our perspective, in that time, we've handled over 4 million searches. 4 million searches, which means about 350 million checks on each individual asset owner's networks, which is just amazing to think what's happened in those 18 months from a safe digging perspective. Just looking at that report that we put together last year, there was a list of outcomes particularly from the roundtable sessions that we talked about. So in terms of strike and near miss reporting, we have today sessions from USAG, Linewatch and UCOPA, three of the leading organizations that look at strikes and near miss reporting. In terms of assets and data, there's a session on the network feedback tool from UK Power Networks and their learning so far. In terms of engagement, this is such a critical area, but it's been such a challenging year for that. So we've needed a combined approach, and there's some content in terms of the e-learning that's had to go on, and webinars and that sort of thing. Again, it's not the normal event calendar. We can't stand or sit here today and say that we've been to 20 or 30 different conferences like usual. They just haven't happened for obvious reasons, but that hasn't stopped the engagement needed across the safe digging industry. In terms of training, as I say, that e-learning module is out there. We're very pleased to get some feedback on that, and it combines with a lot of other people that have put a lot of effort into this area. And then finally, regulation. It's a work in progress, and there really is care needed. There's a session later that looks at what regulation is done in the US, amongst other things. And there really is care needed to deliver what is needed for the industry. So it's a really interesting area, and maybe something we can talk about at the breakout sessions, if that's possible, within the agenda. So a little bit of the industry engagement we talked about. So third year that we've put on the Digging Up Britain report, we've thought it's something that we get support with, and we think it looks great. It's a new look and there's a lot of content. amazing when you think there's a 1.4 million people have seen references to Digging Up Britain, and we've been quoted in the press and all sorts of things, which has been great. It does continually evolve, but it's about opening up what we know and inviting industry stakeholders to engage and help use the data to help people keep people safe and prevent damage. This year was our first ever National Safe Digging Week, and it's all about engaging with consumers. This was, and we undertook or engaged a company to undertake some independent research. They spoke to 2,000 consumers, small builders and farmers, and those statistics there of a quarter of the UK don't check for underground pipes and cables before a spade hitting the ground, or 28% have been severely disrupted by pipe or cable being struck. And that was a great week back in September. Got to a circulation of 200,000 people. Lots of shares from a lot of people on this call today, which is great, because there was a lot of people we know, which is very supportive, but a lot of people we didn't know, and that was as big an indicator of success for us in terms of getting that message out to as many people as possible. I think the best stat that we saw from that research was this one, and it said when people were asked what they would prefer to be without, people were more worried about being without their utilities for a day than their own families, and that's really just show how critical the electricity, gas, oil, and broadband networks are to people in this situation. So we're trying not to mention the C word too much, because I think we've all probably had a little bit enough of it. But I just thought that we'd just reflect on what happened over the year. And as you can see, the various lines there of the last few years' activity, and the red line showing this year's activity by month. And you can clearly see the effect of the initial lockdown. But what a testament to the safe digging industry of how resilient it was. The key workers continued working and kept doing the right thing all the way through. And as you can see there, last month was a stellar month, the biggest one we've had forever. 13,800 per working day was something that took us all by surprise. And so just really want to finish on the new members that have joined since the last event. And as you can see there, a variety of different asset owners, from the electricity, a major DNO, a major water company, gas networks, renewables, water companies, telecoms companies, even offshore wind. There's just it's amazing how many assets there are under the ground and how similar the needs are for those asset owners to protect them. And that's what today's all about. So that's my details are there. We're always really open to talk to people, whatever the solution they have to help this this industry, and whatever perspective they come from. We're really keen to talk and see how we can work together to make it better. So very hopeful that you enjoy today, enjoy what the presenters have to say, but please, as I say, speak to the exhibitors and engage in the breakout sessions, because the more people engage, the better we can make it for everyone. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass you over to Bob now, who will introduce the first session speakers.
Hi, good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for attending. Our first session is about, are we using location technology to its best potential? And we have got two excellent speakers for this. We have Andrew Healy and Phil Cornforth. Andrew is joining us from New Zealand, and I'm really pleased and good to have you, Andrew. Andrew is General Manager of BeforeUdig in New Zealand and has extensive experience in this area and has a first-hand experience that he can bring to explaining his speech. And Phil Cornforth is Stakeholder Engagement Manager for USAG and Damage Prevention Specialist Pelican Corps. And he has 30 years experience in the utility damage specialism area. So I'm very pleased to invite them to speak now. And after they've had the opportunity to present, we'll have a chance, hopefully, for some questions and answers.
So I'm Phil Cornforth, and I am the USAG Stakeholder Engagement Manager, and I'm also the damage prevention specialist for Pelican Corp and Geolantis 360. Just a very brief overview of what makes me an expert. So I've got more than 25, coming up to 30 now, years experience. So that's gained in the UK, Australia and New Zealand. And that was through third-party damage for gas and power DNOs throughout Auckland and the North Island. And then I was with a main contractor for the UFB build. So that's the fibre to the door build for New Zealand. That started quite a few years ago now, and it's almost complete. And then for Pelican Corp, New Zealand and the UK. And then I was in 2018, I became the Stakeholder Engagement Manager for USAG. So that means that I deal with their external communications and the upkeep of the website and yeah, a few other bits and pieces. Okay, so I'll just give a quick overview of USAG itself. So who are we? We are a collaborative group of more than 320 now, and that's utilities, industry groups, contractors, service providers, and regulators. And then you can see on the screen here, there's just a here's just a handful of our members. Okay, and what do we do at USAG? So we promote best practice and safety for those carrying out works. We are a forum for employers and industry partners to influence and promote safety within the sector. And we are the leading provider of industry knowledge. So from all our different members, we've got a website and that's got valuable tools on it, toolkits for information on processes and procedures. We've got an annual strike damage report, so we produce that each year, and that's from damage to data provided by our members, and that's used to highlight trends with a focus within the industry, and it also means that as a contractor, you can benchmark your own performance against the wider industry. And really importantly as well, it's free to use, so all of our members, they provide their time and resources. There's no charge for that, so the whole service is free to use for everyone. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just roll on to a few of the key differences between the UK and New Zealand first of all, because I've spent many years of my life in New Zealand and the industry there, and then having returned to the UK a few years ago and then seeing what the industry does here. So I'll just cover off some of the things that are similar to begin with. So both have a national one-call portal. So that portal in New Zealand, that's where Andrew's sitting, that's called Before You Dig, and the UK, that's Line Search Before You Dig. So interestingly, New Zealand's been around since 2007 and the UK since 2012, so they've got a few years head start. Asset owners, again, similar to the UK, they must provide access to their location information or what they have available, but neither of these regions have government legislation that says that a utility company and asset owner must use the service. So it really is their own choice about how they deliver those plans. Okay, and there is a quite rigid health and safety authority guidance in both countries as well. The guidance in the UK, so we got HSG 47, and in New Zealand they've got the WorkSafe Guide for Working Safety with Underground Services, and both of those, both regions, as I say, they do have rigid health and safety laws to back those up as well. And however, there are pipeline regulations in both regions, so there are laws about what contractors must do when working near high pressure gas, fuel or chemical pipelines. Okay, so industry collaboration and strike data analysis. So between what we do in the UK, what they do in New Zealand. So in the UK, we've got USAG, so that's where I'm talking to you from. and we have best practice toolkits, safety alerts, lessons learned, video resources. We have damage prevention days and weeks now as well. And then in New Zealand, so they've got something a little bit different. They don't have USAG, but they got the NZUAG, so that's the Utilities Advisory Group. And generally those are asset owners and local authorities. So it's kind of the contractors don't really sit in that so much, but they do have an excellent guide for working safely. And they also include in there some street works information, such as backfill compaction and traffic management. They also have damage prevention workshops. I'm sure Andrew will mention his. I believe he had a real life one today. And but they don't. What they don't have is they don't have any strike data analysis at the moment. Excuse me. So whereas in the UK we do have the data report that we produce annually, there isn't one at present in New Zealand. Okay, so just looking at the One Call portal, so like line search before you dig and before you dig in New Zealand. So as I say, New Zealand's got more than 90% of asset owners are now on that service now. So really, it's coming up. You know, it's coming up to most of them. They have got a bit of a head start on the UK, and they've been running since 2007. And in the UK, around about 60% of asset owners are now on the service. They've started a little bit later, but as you can see from New Zealand, as the service matures, more and more utilities, they do realise that it's the sensible thing to do is to cut down the work of the contractor or those excavating by just making a single inquiry. And the results do show in a reduction in damages across networks. Okay, so just concentrating on a couple of those networks and what happens in New Zealand and the UK. So New Zealand is 100% coverage of telecommunications networks. So everybody is on the service, and what it does mean that when they went onto that service, they got a major uplift in the amount of excavation inquiries they were receiving, and they also did see a significant reduction in damage. And so importantly, in New Zealand, the biggest telco companies, the incumbents, the equivalent's called Chorus, but it used to be Telecom New Zealand. So similar to the Open Reaches of the world and the Virgins of the world, they are now they are part of that service. Okay, and here this chap here, I don't know why he's looking so proud of himself, but this was just before Christmas. This was in London, and the cables that were damaged, that cut off services to around 80,000 people. So there was a huge disruption to the industry. Okay, and what's different in New Zealand as well is water. So most water authorities in New Zealand, they also have their assets. They're part of the service, and they make those plans freely available as easy as they can to get. So that's something that doesn't seem to happen so much in the UK, and maybe it's just because there's been no major incidents or not, but as we can see here on the screen, I'm sure the guy that was driving this Ferrari sees that slightly differently, or these people living in these houses. It is a major issue in this country. It's probably one of the most common things that's reported in the media is damages to water assets and the resulting damage afterwards. Okay, and New Zealand also has stormwater on those on the system as well. That's quite a critical risk to them. Obviously, it rains. It rains an awful lot. Can rain an awful lot during the summer, and really heavy downpours. So it's important that those systems work fully. And also, just in regards to water as well, there can be drought years in New Zealand. So it's critical that they do keep leakages to a minimum, and damage to water pipes that is not discovered is a major cause of leakage. Okay, so just looking at some of the things that they do in New Zealand that I've recognised that seems to take place a little bit more than the UK. So planning wise, so it's normal for all dig sites to undergo a pre-works site reconnaissance and scoping. Data collected from these is taken back to the offices. So it's done quite a way in advance to design away from any risks within the work sites. And a full pre-worked utility locate with the assets marked on the ground. That's carried out in just about all cases. And then, but what I do see, I'll compare it a little bit to what I do see over here, is I see many work sites, they are only marked up with the position of assets to be installed. So I see quite a few markouts on the ground for where chambers are going, where cabinets are going, and connections are going. Don't seem to see many markouts from what assets are already there. So it seems to be common that that they will be getting a worker with a, let's say, Cat and Jenny to sweep the work site before they dig to see if there's anything there. So in New Zealand, that wouldn't be considered proper pre-planning. That would only be carried out when responding to an emergency work. Okay, so anyway, these many of these steps they would equate to quality levels, probably to quality levels B and C in the UK locate standards. So they don't really seem to happen so much. Okay, so just moving on to locates and surveys. So I'll just quickly go through these. So Cat and Jenny, so again, focusing on the UK, Cat and Jenny for more simple cable avoidance. Precision locates, don't seem to see many of those, so many of that happening in the UK. Seem to see a lot of the Cat and Jenny though. There's much larger prevalence in NZ for the precision locators, and that's probably something that Andrew's video and discussion would highlight a bit more. And then ground penetrating radar now. So technology is really coming on leaps and bounds with GPR. We see that the interpretation of the data that's been taken away much more from the user of the machine and actually to the device itself. Okay, and then finally we've got GNSS high precision, so used in conjunction with some of the locators as well. That can now give real precision on where assets lie under the ground when you're recording that data. Okay, so marking up the ground itself. So as I say, in the UK, many of the locates stop at the markup itself. There's no reporting afterwards of the actual data collected. So that data collected and the markup, that would become a PAS 128 or quality level B. But so they're not achieving that quality level if they're just doing the markup. And I commonly seen the paint used on the ground doesn't conform to what the UK standards are. Those are the street work standards. So again, common white paint seems to be a common theme I see in the UK of marking out assets, also marking out assets that are there, but just using white paint and then putting an E or whatever is next to it for what that locate is. Okay, right. So trial holes and pits. This is normal practice in New Zealand. See an awful lot of this now taking place. It's incorporated into safe digging permits, and they're dug along the excavation route to expose assets. And these are used to confirm route clearance as well, even to see if there are no assets actually in their route. So that's something that's really common, and that took off in New Zealand from the ultra-fast fibre broadband build. And that's it's come more and more, and it really is now just a common thing to take place in New Zealand. So I'd hope to see more of that in the UK, and I certainly see there's more hydro excavation or vacuum excavation activity taking place. So I think that is something that's coming along in the UK. All right, so just moving on to kind of the technology itself. I'm not so much going to talk about the locating tech, but the assets location data. So what to do with that data once a site has been marked out. So first of all, to improve it, well, I mean, it's going to reduce strikes due to incorrect recording of assets at installation, improves health and safety outcomes for the reduction in strikes. It can be used to correct legacy information for already installed assets, and the recorded asset data, it can be trusted. So if you're using a high precision device to record the locations, you can trust that data. Okay, so this is the traditional method of collecting the data. Pencil, pen, piece of paper. So it's time consuming. It has to be accuracy. It requires much manual measuring and surveying as well. Interpretation of hand-drawn records can be really difficult. Assets such as house connections and fibre to the premises, they may not get recorded just due to the time scale. And records, they might get destroyed or lost. So it's really easy for them to get left behind in a van, get muddled up in different project backpacks and not get to the office. So the way to do this is changing all along. And then of course, once that plan is back in the office in hand, it's a manual transfer into the GIS or the CAD systems of either the contractors or the utilities. So overall, down the line, the data, it can cause many problems in the future for anybody wishing to excavate in the next 20 or 30 years if the asset hasn't been recorded correctly in the right place to begin with. All right, so how can we solve this? Well, there's now mobile data collection platforms that are coming to the market. So this collects the data from precision locators and some cat and jennies, and it does this through Bluetooth and GPS and also the GNSS as well. So as a locator, you perform the traditional worksite mark out and you collect the data digitally as you're going along. It just transmits it from the locator to the device. So how does it do that? That's a mobile app that's on the phone or tablet, and as I say, it collects that GPS positioning data or the GNSS, the antenna, the precision data from the antenna. And it can also be used, so these systems can also be used by those not using those devices that aren't skilled in locating, so they can be used to manually collect that on-site data as well, and then get that into GIS systems. Okay, so once that's into the device itself, it's then uploaded through the cloud, and that can then be exported out, and that can be into GIS and into CAD, so you can overlay those into your own project designs for the most up-to-date asset plans. You can compare them with those supplied by asset owners, and you can look for differences where you can take differences in that asset information. You can take additional risk mitigation measures like hand digging, vacuum excavation. And so you can combine locates of multiple assets and have those on a mobile viewer at the work site. Okay. This is really interesting stuff as well. So you can take this asset information. So for instance, here we've got information from trial holes with photographs, duct configurations, depths, separations, ground conditions, and you can upload these into the system, and then this can go back to the asset owner as well. And so the utility asset owner, this can be trusted information, and they can update their records for anything historic that's there, so that people digging there in the future, they know that the asset information is more or less correct. Okay, so that I think is it for me. I've got a few seconds left, so yeah, follow USAG on LinkedIn. Hopefully next year that'll be all of us in the room. But yeah, please do follow us. I update information on there regularly.
The video that I couldn't show you, and I do apologize for that. You can see that on our LinkedIn feed, or if you follow us on Instagram. It really was just describing how in New Zealand we have adopted a certification for locators. We've adopted a certification that was started in Australia, in Queensland, dial before you dig over there, and we adopted that here in New Zealand. And what that's doing to the landscape within New Zealand around locates. So at the moment, you can use our service and you can request a locate. It's just a matter of ticking a box, and you can request a locate, and that'll go to the utilities, and then they can start facilitating all of those locates. Not all utilities provide locates. Some choose not to. The telcos are fairly heavily into providing locates. Some of the power companies as well, although some split their locates into, if you request one through Before You Dig, they will have their third-party locate contractor come out and locate that for you. If you don't tick that box there, requesting a locate, they're generally quite happy for you to locate yourselves. However, if it's around their core network, they may have ideas about coming and having a good look at what you're up to. So yeah, they do, and many still insist you use their third-party locator. This creates a bit of a conundrum because if you take one situation where I used to live in Hamilton on River Road, which follows the Waikato River, the Mighty Chiefs, if you follow rugby. There's about 6 utilities along that road, and probably 5 of them would like to all come and locate themselves. So rather than you selecting a competent, certified locator, they say, no, we have to do that. We're going to send our guy or girl, and 5 of them do that. So it's a bit of a logistical challenge, and that's something that we're aiming to change. Some of them, not all of them, charge. Locates have been around for a while. We've always had location services. Obviously, the post office, which is now Chorus, which was Telecom at one stage, they had a dedicated line, a 124 number, and that would go to the line depot, and then they would handle that locally. And generally, you had a cable fault guy or person who was sent out with a cat and Jenny. So a little bit more generic, not as accurate, and mainly to fix cables. There was always energized locates and above ground access. And I'm told that potholing was used a lot more extensively and physical eyeballing of the asset, more so than today, although Phil touched upon this, that the hydro side of things is facilitating a lot more physical eyeballing of assets. Although, you know, today in Auckland, we had 210 contractors at our damage prevention day, and the local power company indicated they weren't particularly happy, or the jury was still out around hydro excavation and what it does to the coatings, etc., on their network. So that's a bit of a space to watch. So we'll be keeping in touch with that. There is a locating shift from utilities. I mean, traditionally, locating was provided solely by utilities, mainly in the telco space. Obviously, we've got a lot more telcos these days, but also power companies. So they were the main two. They're the main asset providers traditionally. Many network locators with that knowledge, that sort of local knowledge that I was talking about. And if you think of the post office or telecom, you know, the local guy prided himself on knowing where everything was. And he was also aided with a bit of technology, the old cat and Jenny. So look, a lot of those people have left the industry now, which, you know, creates a few challenges, but many of those first independent locators around the 2010, 2008 maybe, came from the network providers. Some utilities have pushed locates the responsibility onto the contractors. That power company in Auckland, they've saved millions of dollars by doing that, although they will still locate around their core or their transmission, their network. Utilities still mostly choose to locate at their cost when they choose to locate. And they'll do that when they don't have diversity or triversity. Some utilities choose to charge and some don't. So look, the rise of the locator in New Zealand, what's it due to? It really has gained momentum from 2010 onwards. Population growth is a significant factor. Infrastructure, there's been a steady rise in infrastructure that's very closely linked to population. And also real estate, commercial and residential. And right now we're in the midst of trying to, we've actually got a property boom and we've got a housing shortage. So it's right in the midst of a global pandemic. Directional drilling has created a bit of momentum. It's also created challenges, and that's partly why you need locators. Although some of the depths that utilities are being laid at is very challenging for the technology to accurately locate, and that's an ongoing issue. Health and safety regulations have really driven the rise of the locator in New Zealand and probably globally. 20 years ago, we just didn't have the health and safety regulations. You know, and New Zealand has had a tradition of, she'll be right, mate, you know, just go ahead, you'll be okay. Although I saw a video released in Ireland recently with a similar type of message from the power providers over there. So that's driven things, and obviously the obvious one is the internet. You know, from early 2000s, I suppose, but really gaining momentum with fibre going into the ground, and we've had a rollout here from Crown Fibre Holdings, which have divvied up, you know, fibre in the ground. So look, those are the things that have driven it. In the early days, acquisition of skills was very challenging. So if you take Nolka's New Zealand's founding president, he's predominantly self-taught, books and YouTube videos. He's got a history in IT, so he's fairly clued up and savvy from a tech perspective. Vendors gave him instructions, 30-minute instruction videos. And he had the opportunity to shadow an Aussie company for a couple of days, and he even spent time in London working for a company that had a restrainted trade around GPR, so they nabbed a Kiwi to do that for them and contracted him for a couple of months. There was minimal training. I mean, he spent time doing an NZQA qualified course, but it's really a waste of money. He knew more than the locators, than the instructor, sorry. Subsurface detection, that's a reasonable sized company in Auckland. Started with a cat and Jenny for his brother, a directional driller, and basically learnt on the job, the school of hard knocks or mistakes. So, you know, that's how people actually gain their skills. Justin, who owns that company, said that he ordered videos from the States, from Staking U, and that taught him about frequencies and antenna, peak and null, and other aspects of locating. Nolka Australia sort of gave some of the first training, and Justin and Innes took advantage of that, and attended conferences down the track, but predominantly self-taught, and then attending courses and getting the learnings formally later on. The problem with that is there's no way to know what you don't know, and it creates the opportunity for monumental disasters. And you spend a lot more time worrying about the accuracy in the field. So you're using your own time to make sure that you can accurately verify the results that you get, particularly when they differ from plans that the utilities are issuing. So you're a locator. Yep, I bought the gear. I'm ready to locate lethal infrastructure. No problem, give us a go. Like I say, that can be the attitude, and there is no legislation in New Zealand. Anybody can start a locating company, and they do. And this is problematic. It is really problematic if you don't know what you're doing. I was in one of the regional towns earlier this week, and a certified locator told me there that there's a guy who'd started a company down there, and he'd had his second strike, and he'd picked up a lot of work because some of the companies that this guy had been doing work for, he just wasn't accurate enough. So he's now seeing the need for training. So it still goes on, but you know, we're bringing a change. So why certification? There's now a benchmark, there's a standard, a competency standard that is a stake in the ground, excuse the pun, and you know, it creates awareness that there is a skill and a competency, a skill set that you need as a locator. It removes that self-appraisal type attitude, and I hear it a lot. Oh, my guys are great, they're excellent, you know. How do you know? You know, how can you verify that objectively? It's generally just an objective feeling that our guys are good. Maybe they've had near misses, maybe they haven't had hit infrastructure or strikes, maybe they have. It's very subjective, that type of thing. A certification actually verifies if your guys are excellent, you know. And it begs the question for the locator, am I good enough? You know, up until now, I could tell everybody I was great, but now there's a standard, and I have to, really I'm obligated in many ways to meet that standard. And if I don't, I lose a bit of credibility in the marketplace. Proven competent is an attractive proposition for utilities. They've taken a while to warm up, but they do like the idea that a locator is proven competent. And it provides the market with assurance that a standard has been met. There's theoretical knowledge that's required. You need a 95% pass rate on that. It has 3 areas that you test it on: plan and preparing for locating, locating techniques, the actual job of locating, and the infrastructure, the environment that you're locating in, and the rules, etc. around that. It ensures that you've got calibrated equipment, and you have passed a practical competency test, and that's significant. All right, initially, not everyone loved us, but you know, we were coming from a position of a proven model in Australia, where they had nearly 800 certified locators. So it wasn't a completely foreign concept. And initially, we floated the idea of certifying locators predominantly with telcos. Phil was actually involved with that. I picked up the baton when Phil deserted us and went to the UK, greener fields, but hopefully he's coming back. In principle, there was agreement. There was a few sort of whisperings and sideways glances, but improving competency sounded good, but there was a bit of resistance from their third-party locators. And some of that was around their commercial concerns. They perceived a threat. Compliance costs, they had this idea that, you know, there was going to be huge compliance costs. They sort of felt that they knew what they were doing. Why do they need a competency test, you know? It's not something. Have I lost my slide there? Yep. Let's have a look. And they felt a bit like a cow at a new gate. That's a term we use here, and you guys probably use it in the UK. But in the end, we just said, hey, look, we're going ahead. You can come on this journey with us or not. We're doing it. So in terms of working with the industry, sort of the water level was rising regarding awareness, and Chaz NZ was a construction industry initiative around safety. Civil contractors were wanting to improve outcomes for their contractors on the road, and NZTA on their sites as well. So it was kind of like the perfect storm in a way. There was a bit of a groundswell towards change, and NOLCA New Zealand supported us, and a core of people, a couple of those guys I mentioned before, in Christchurch after the earthquake, that also created some momentum for change and professionalism around Locates. One of our few training companies was based out of Christchurch, Accurate Instruments. So we had a good support about, you know, around what we were wanting to achieve. And locators themselves wanted to achieve certification. They felt it was, you know, a very honourable thing to be certified. It was professionally a sign of competence, and we were very buoyed by that. That was good. It was good for us. So where have we got to date? We have had 30 locators who have undertaken certification. We've certified 21 of those, and 3 of them were on a resit. So you can start to get a feel there. There's about a 30% failure rate. These are professional locators. So you're talking about 1 in 3 locators that have possibly been locating for a number of years, and 30% of them failed. And that was consistent with Australia. The failure rate in Australia is now 50% or more, because you're getting all of those part-time locators coming in and wanting to test their skills. So we've been quite interrupted with COVID. We've had a lot of support from Dial Before You Dig in Australia, from the Queensland guys, and we've got a chief assessor that came over to do our initial assessments. And within COVID, we've had to find a really good assessor, and they're not easy to find. It took a little bit of hunting. The utilities are warming up. They're welcoming the competency. They're starting to smile. And I think we're not far from maybe not a full embrace, but a partial embrace, you know, the hug, the careful hug from the utility. So change is happening, but it happens slowly.
Andrew, we're beginning to run up to time, if you can.
All right. This is my second to last slide. Okay. Before long, it will have been their idea. And the next steps, we want to certify more, 50 by the end of next year. We're going to promote our utilities through Before You Dig around private property locates. And we hope to get asset owners to recognise competency and take advantage. So thank you very much, and apologies for the break early on. That was unfortunate. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew and Phil, for 2 very, very good and detailed presentations. We're running close up to time now. I just want to mention quickly, as I said before, the opportunity for questions. If you put your questions in, we will make sure they get to Andrew and Phil. And if you put your full details, we'll make sure that they get back to you. The poll questions numbers 4 and 5 are now open. So how do you think damage reporting should be improved, and what's the single biggest problem with locating assets on site? Both of those are open now and operating, and I can see you're completing those, which is really great. The lead into the next breakout session, I think it's important to remind the delegates that you need to go to the return to the timeline to join the next session. And you were sent an email, hopefully on the 3rd of November, with details which breakout room you should join. And there will be a facilitator in each of those breakout rooms to ensure that the session goes well. And just a final reminder, really, the next presentation starts at 11 o'clock. So I think, thank you, everybody. And we'll move now to the next breakout session. Thank you.